Welcome to the Outside the Ring. I am here with my guest, Donovan Dijak.
What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good.
Happy to hear it. So I'm gonna start by asking, what got you into this world of professional wrestling?
That's a good question. I was a fan growing up. I started watching when I was I don't know what grade, but it was 1998, so I was about 11 years old. Um, my brother was watching, so I started watching at the time, and then I was a pretty big fan from 1998 to 2003, and that's kind of when um, sports sort of took over for me. And so from 2003-ish to 2010, I wasn't really, watching much
Yeah,
on television anymore. But once my sports career concluded, then I picked it back up, kind of picked up right where I left off, and I became a fan again, and that's where I was watching, for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, until finally I realized that there was a professional wrestling school near me, the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, where I just started training, or where I just started as a trainer last week. So it kind of came full circle there
yeah.
with where I began in Massachusetts in 2012, and that's sort of how my career began.
How did you know that you wanted to be a professional wrestler?
I mean, as soon as I got into the building and kind of got to hear the sounds and see the sights, it just kind of felt natural. The second I stepped foot in the ring and I got to do, hit the ropes and grab a headlock and stuff like that. All of it came kind of naturally to me. I think mostly because I'd seen so much professional wrestling throughout my life that there was a lot of muscle memory. I was the movements felt natural to me because I could picture myself doing them for so many years.
Yeah.
Uh, just being a fan and from seeing other people doing it and kind of imagining myself doing it. So I think that probably helped a lot.
Where did you start wrestling at?
I started at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. That's kind of where I started training. It's in North Andover, Massachusetts. My trainers were Brian Fury and Todd Hansen, who's Ivar of the Viking Raiders. He's on Monday Night Raw right now.
Yeah, I've
Well,
heard.
yeah, he might be. I think he just got surgery, so he's probably out for a little bit. But yeah, he's
Yeah.
usually.
What was it like, or yeah, what was it like to get to WWE?
I mean, it was a bit of a bumpy road. There was some. I had my first tryout in June of 2013, so a little over 10 years ago, in a place called FCW, which is Florida Championship Wrestling in Tampa, Florida. It was really just right at the beginning of like NXT, sort of the beginning of it. NXT started as like that weird sort of game show type
Yeah.
thing, but in terms of the rebranding of FCW, that this was right around that time. Um, they were kind of changing FCW television into NXT television. So yeah, I had to try it around then. It didn't quite work out, but around that same time is when I first signed with the Ring of Honor, or maybe a year or two later. So so once I was able to sign with the Ring of Honor, then the that's when the ball started rolling for me in terms of progress and television and things like that. And then finally, I was able to get in touch with William Regal, and he was able to help facilitate my sort of transition from Ring of Honor to WWE, and it ended up being a bit of a longer experience than I would have hoped because between the contract, uh, there was some issues with contract tampering on WWE side, and Ring of Honor was there might have been a possible lawsuit. I don't. It didn't involve me, but that
Yeah.
I mean, it involved my contract. So my contract kept getting pushed back. So there was some issues there. And then when I finally started with WWE, it felt like the timing was a little off because of that. So I ended up not doing much on television for the first 6 months. Um, so it took a little bit to get some momentum going, but once we started with the once I was about a year in with NXT, we started the ball rolling on Dominik Dijakovic, and there was a little bit of um, setbacks there. That's the one injury that I ever had was I tore my meniscus wrestling the Velveteen Dream on a house show when I was going to wrestle him in a singles match at Takeover Connecticut. Um, but the injury happened and that match didn't happen, but I was able to come back pretty quickly from it and we kind of took off from there.
Yeah. So first time you got caught up to the main roster, they brought you in for Retribution
Yep.
in T-Bar. So what was that like being caught up under T-Bar?
Yeah, I mean it was I wouldn't even really call it a call up per se. I was told at some point, maybe gosh, maybe 4 or 5 months before that that I'd been called up, but then nothing really happened and nobody was really giving me any information. There was no real uh explanation of a plan. I ended up going back down to NXT for a little bit to finish up a feud with Karrion Cross, and then I got recalled back up, but still it didn't seem like there was much of a plan. So basically, I started pitching. I saw Retribution happening, and basically I went straight to Vince McMahon and pitched my version of what I saw and what I thought it could be, which ended up happening about maybe 50% of what I said to him ended up happening, and the other 50% was kind of his spin on my ideas.
Yeah.
Um, so it was in a sense it was what I wanted and what I asked for, but in another sense it was completely off base. But we were trying to make do, and I at least had the comfort of a job during the pandemic, which was a tumultuous time
Mhm.
and a very volatile time. And I was also, surrounded by some of my best friends in life. So I was happy in a sense, but there was a lot of discouraging creative moments of that as well.
Yeah. When Retribution came into play, I really didn't know what to think about it at first.
Mm-hmm. I'd say that's probably true for most people who saw Retribution, including those of us that were in it.
Now, would you have rather been brought up to Raw as T-Bar within Retribution or under like Dominik Dijakovic?
I mean, ultimately, it depends on the creative plan, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh, for example, I would have preferred to be brought up as Dijak, which I was, but then nothing happened and my contract wasn't renewed. So if you compare that to T Bar, maybe you start thinking about T Bar a little more because at least the character was on Raw and at least the character was featured in important segments and things like that. That it might not have been the best in the world, but it's six of one, half a dozen of another. Do you want to
Mhm.
be it's making the difficult decision of do you want to be on Raw as a bad character or do you want to be not featured at all as a good character, right? It's like which one's
Mhm.
better? I don't know. Gun to my head, I'm probably choosing the one that's at least has a chance, right?
Yeah.
Instead of the one that just isn't on Raw in any capacity. But you know, that those decisions are out of my hands. So I try not to focus too much time on them and thinking about the what ifs, because the what ifs are someone else's decision. They're not mine.
Yeah. And then like August or sometime last year, you got brought back down to NXT under Dijak
Mm-hmm.
and had a few different feuds within like Joe Gacy. I think you did stuff with Wesley for the North American title.
Yep.
And then you were in that Iron Survivor, I believe.
Yeah, it was my stuff in NXT was very memorable for me. It was a very exciting opportunity for me because it was the first time where I felt like I was uh being given consistent um consistent opportunity on both television and on premium live events, right? When I was Dominik Dijakovic, I had pretty consistent TV time, but the takeovers were a little fewer and further between. I was only on two total. I was on War Games, and then I was on Takeover Portland, both of which went very well for me. And War Games was my only main event ever in WWE. So that was nice, or in terms of premium live event anyway.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a little different when you're being kind of featured by yourself as a singles competitor. Then a little more, focus goes on you. It becomes a bit more of a spotlight. So the fact that I was able to get, I think it ended up being five, maybe six of those in my second run in NXT. Um, I think five. Yeah, it was Wes, Ilya, then the Iron Survivor, then Joe, then Stand and Deliver. Yeah, so I had five total in that second NXT run. So that was very exciting for me because that's the big stage, that's the big platform, and it felt like each and every one of them just kept getting better and better and better, and I kept holding myself to a very high standard. Um, so yeah, I mean, did did I want to be the top guy in NXT? Yes, I did. Did I want to be a champion in NXT? Yes, I did. So it's not like this was the greatest run that I ever envisioned in my mind, but it was more than I could have asked for at that time. It
Yeah.
revitalized my career. It set me up in a position where right now, even though the unfortunate circumstances that I was trying to avoid ended up happening, it still set me up in a position where I'm in a very good spot now, and a lot of people are aware of what I can do. So I'm fortunate in that regard. Very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah. Um, Between both Dominik Dijakovic and Dijak in NXT, you've gotten title shots under both.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're more under Dijak than Dominik
Mm-hmm.
because I started watching later.
Sure.
And I remember I would be, I was so into like the Dijak character
Mm-hmm.
that I would end up, even though you were supposed to be like this heel, I couldn't help but cheer. I was rooting you on.
Thank you very much. I
Hmm.
feel like that was a common sentiment amongst a lot of my fans because I almost became a bit of an underdog in terms of how many kind of chances and opportunities I was given, and I kept coming really close and really close and really close. And the matches always delivered. The matches were always excellent. It felt like the fans, or my fans specifically, but it felt like the fans in general were pretty ready for me to start finding some success in WWE. And unfortunately, it feels like at the kind of apex of that feeling is when they sort of decided that they had had enough of my tenure in WWE. So unfortunately, it didn't work out this run, but there's always another opportunity around the road. So you never know where I'm going to end up. I might come back to WWE sometime if there's mutual interest, but you can't predict the future. So it's hard to tell, it's hard to see, but I think both sides were always open to the opportunity.
How would you come up with with like your finisher, feast your eyes?
That's a great question. That I haven't been asked in a very long time. The actual situation was, as I said, I started training at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. One of my fellow trainees at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, who started a year or two after me, was a fellow by the name of Christian Casanova, who's more commonly known now as Carmelo Hayes. So he and I were training together for a very long time, and we used to stay after class to just practice stuff and work on stuff. So one time in 2014, I was just with him, and I was practicing different maneuvers, and I tried something that sort of ended up as like a power slam with him on my shoulders, but he was looking up, and then from there I kind of power slammed him forward into a knee lift, and I thought, oh, that was an interesting move that I don't think I've ever seen before. So I started trying doing it that way. I think the uh, first time I ever used it in a match was on in there used to be these things called iPay-per-views back in 2014, and there was a company called CZW where like Adam Cole started and stuff. I think Trick Williams started there too, and I was on that match. It was a very short match against a guy named Alexander James, who's actually a coach at the Performance Center now. But yeah, in that match, I think that was probably the first time I ever used it in any capacity. As I started kind of workshopping it a little bit, I started turning it more from this power slam thing into a torture rack.
Yeah.
Same mechanism, but I did it from a torture rack. And then I did it a little bit with the left knee, and then I started shifting over with the right knee. And just the more I did it, the more I played with it, and the more I kind of liked the way that it looked. Until finally we landed on what I've been using from, I don't know, maybe 2015 until now. So yeah, I've been
Mm.
using it about 9 years now. Um, and it always got a good reaction.
Yeah.
I think the first time most people saw it was in the finals of or not in the finals, but in my first match of the Ring of Honor Top Prospect tournament, and it got a big reaction in the crowd. And I think from that point on, Ring of Honor was a little more keen on using me and for having me advance and ultimately win the Top Prospect tournament. So yeah, I think that played a bit of a role. So that's kind of how it evolved over time to the point where it is now.
Yeah. Who would you say were some of your toughest opponents?
Yeah, I mean, toughness is an interesting word, because there's so many varying levels of toughness in terms of like how to define it, right? Like
Hmm.
I would consider someone like Ilya Dragunov as very like resilient,
Hmm.
tough. Like he can, there's really nothing that he shies away from. He leans into contact. He delivers contact. He's not shy about taking things or anything like that. But then there's a different level of toughness, which is like a Matt Riddle, for example, who's the kind of guy who in a real fight he would absolutely destroy me, right? He'd he'd beat me senseless. So those are kind of varying ends of the toughness spectrum. In terms of guys I've wrestled, in terms of guys I haven't wrestled, Brock Lesnar obviously is extremely resilient and an outstanding fighter as well. So I mean, he's a guy that I'd add to the list. But yeah, ultimately that's kind of the varying degrees of it that I see.
Yeah. Did when you got called up the second time under Dijak, did you hear anything about what they would have? Obviously, they didn't have plans, but did you hear or did they tell you anything?
I was not told anything. No, I was given no plans. I assume if there was a plan, that it probably would have been communicated to me in some way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
I never heard anything. I'm not sure that there was a plan there. I think that it may have been more of a timing thing and a contract thing more than anything else, if I had to guess. But again, I wasn't told anything at all. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer, an explanation as to what happened. I can theorize and I can guess, but none of it is based in fact. So it's really just kind of guesswork.
Yeah. If you're not told something, you can't really answer a question.
Pretty much, yeah. That's sort of how I felt, and it was frustrating to feel that way. I wanted answers. I wanted to try something. I wanted to do something, and I was offering ideas. I was offering lots of ideas, but it just felt like it felt like the decision had kind of already been made at that point. I don't know if it had or not, but that's just how it felt.
How did you come up with the name T-Bar when you were, or how did the name T-Bar get given to you?
I have no idea. I can tell you how it was given to me. It was given to me by like the information was physically delivered to me by Bruce Pritchard. He told all of us in Gorilla that this is going to be your name, this is going to be your name, this is going to be your name. In terms of who came up with them, I have no idea who pitched the names. Ultimately, they all had to be signed off by Vince McMahon at that point. So the buck stops at him. So ultimately it's his decision.
Yeah.
I don't know if he thought of the name T Bar and like said it's going to be T-Bar, but he at the very minimum approved it. So he had something to do with the creative approval of the name T-Bar. As to who actually thought of it and who said it the first time, I have no idea. I was never told that.
Do you have any favorite people you like to work with in the ring?
Yeah, I have a ton of them, like a lot. I really enjoy working with so many people. I've had classic rivalries with Keith Lee and who else? I mean, Ilya Dragunov comes to mind. Um, Cody Rhodes I've wrestled a ton of times, and he and I had have great chemistry. Um, the list really goes on. Josh Briggs, Carmelo Hayes, my buddy Mikey Webb, who I was in a tag team with for a very long time, Anthony Green, who I'm friends with. There's a big list of guys who I've been able to wrestle, multiple times. Wesley and I have great chemistry. Eddie Thorpe and I have great chemistry. Um, yeah, there's just a big list of guys who I've had multiple matches with, and they've all been very fun and entertaining. The Young Bucks, AJ Styles, Jay Lethal. I've been very fortunate to be able to wrestle a huge percentage of some of the best wrestlers in the world. Obviously, there's still some left that I've never had the chance to. So it's not like I'm going to rest on my laurels. I still want to wrestle all the best in the world, but even wrestling guys who have very little experience is a fun experience for me. Wrestling guys with way more experience than me, which there's not many of them left at this point, but there still are some. That's a great experience for me. Um, it's all just very fun for me. And I'm glad that my style is a very adaptive one, so I can kind of mix in a lot of what other people like to do, and I think that makes them comfortable in the ring, and that's why a lot of my matches present so well on television and in real life.
Yeah. Do you wish that you would have, or in WWE, wish you would have had a different creative direction with any of your characters?
Yeah, all of them. I didn't. So that's the thing about creative direction, is that I have very little say in that, because there's kind of two aspects of creative, one of which is direction, right? And that I consider
Hmm.
that more like the booking of my character, like where it's going, what it's doing, why is he doing that sort of stuff. Um, I always had very little say in that, and it was more of a decision on my part because I don't feel comfortable telling the booker how to book. I feel like that's their job. And maybe
Yeah,
this is a fault of my own. Maybe I should have been more involved in that process and I should have made more requests or something like that. But the reality is I didn't do it very often. There was a handful of times, but it didn't work, right? I would
right.
try to tell Vince, for example, like if we do this and this, and then we can pay off at this show, and we'll. I remember specifically myself, and I was tagging with Mace, and we were feuding with Mustafa Ali and Mansoor, who are we're all friends with each other. So we came up with this plan where we feud with them for a while, and then it pays off with a tag team championship match at one of the Saudi Arabia shows, and we pitched that all to him, and none of it happened. But that was one of the times where I tried to pitch like creative direction. Usually, what I was more in tune with was creative presentation, right? Like how I look, how I talk, what words I'm saying, what things I'm doing in terms of what my character does, feels, looks like, sounds like, things like that. Because I felt like that was more of like something that I can control my presentation, what this looks like, rather than just kind of guessing what the booking decisions are going to be. Because
Mhm.
booking decisions all have to intertwine, right? I
Yeah,
can't say, oh, I want to be this and I want to do this on this show because with this guy, because he already has a plan and he's already doing something different and I don't know about that. So it always felt like a weird game of chess that I didn't want to be involved in. That being said, I always felt like I wanted more. I always wanted to be the top guy. I always wanted to be given opportunities to have longer matches and to shine and be featured on television more. And that always comes with a championship. So that was kind of my train of thought of what I wanted and my what my aspirations were in terms of creative direction. Um, Basically, none of that ever came to fruition throughout any of the three characters that I had in WWE, which, I'm not angry about that. I understand booking decisions and how they make and timing and how it all has to line up. I just, I wanted those opportunities and I feel like I was never given them, even towards the end when I felt like I was earning them and I was told that I was in a position where earning them was a possibility. It still felt like it wasn't quite happening. So a little disappointing in that sense, but I understand that business decisions are business decisions, and ultimately these people are making the choice that they feel is going to make the company the most money. So I can't fault them for that. I can disagree with them, but I don't hold any animosity or place blame in that sense.
yeah. What was it like working with like Mustafa Ali and everyone in Retribution?
I would say that everyone in Retribution were I think we were the five hardest working individuals in WWE that I've ever seen because we had to fight, scratch, and claw for literally everything. It was like every week we were given these sort of these creative directions that didn't make much sense and didn't seem like they, a lot of it just seemed like it was just kind of off the cuff and didn't make a lot of sense. And we had to work very, very hard to get it to just even be remotely presentable. So I have all the love and respect in the world for everybody in that group. And I think that um, we all earned each other's trust and we all earned each other's respect. And I wouldn't say that we're proud of the group per se because it was such a overall the presentation was so lacking, but I would say that we're all proud of each other in terms of what we went through and what we accomplished together by just having each other's back and being there for each other and sticking up for each other. I think that speaks to us more as human beings and professionals than anything that goes really well in professional wrestling, right?
Yeah. And one final question. What was it like working during the pandemic and everything?
was very surreal. It was very surreal. As a pro wrestler, you're used to feeding off the audience, doing this, taking pictures. All that stuff vanished for a little bit, for what I think was about probably 4 or 5 months, something like that. Um, Longer in a sense. Well, I mean, we had nothing for 4 or 5 months, but then we got the video screens and stuff like that. So at least there was something, but
Yeah.
still, the whole thing, and it's just from beginning to end was very surreal. Not a lot of fan interaction. There'd be fans outside the arena at some point, and you'd go over and you could kind of say hi to them through masks and stuff. But ultimately, being inside the building for those shows, it was a very surreal experience. Wrestling on the shows, on a live show where it just kind of goes to commercial break and everything stops and there's no fans there. That's a surreal experience. And then more than anything else, I remember would be sitting in the arena kind of by myself because there's nobody else there. And
Hmm.
it's these decent sized arenas, and you're the only one sitting in the seats watching the show. There's cameramen and commentators and stuff and the people in the ring, but other than that, it's just you in the crowd. So I always found that to be a very surreal sort of experience where it's like, wow, this whole show is kind of just happening for me as a fan. It was just kind of this weird experience that I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, this will probably never ever happen again. And it's it's pretty unique, for all the things that we're all dealing with in life right now. I mean, this is a pretty cool experience. So I was able to at least enjoy that portion of it.
Yeah. With that being said, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, dude. I appreciate you having me.
Have a good day.
Thanks, man. You too.